Okay, there we are. Okay, so guys, again, welcome to the class. Today's lesson is titled Nonfiction, and this title might ring a bell because at the end, I'm sorry, not at the end, at the beginning of the course, we were talking about the three different expressions or forms of a language. We said that a language can be prose, it can also be expressed as poetry, and be expressed as drama. And then when we talk of prose is divided into two general areas. One is fiction and the other one is nonfiction. Most of last semester was devoted to nonfiction, prose nonfiction. This semester is going to have more variety because we're going to be exploring the other side, the other face of the coin, which is nonfiction, the other side of the coin of what we call prose. But then we're also going to be delving into poetry and into drama at the end of the course. So, what is nonfiction all about? Well, let's see. Let's give you a definition. You can define nonfiction, and this is the definition that I want you to use whenever anybody asks you, or even Mr. Soto's asking you, give me a definition of nonfiction. This is the one I want to hear because I think that it is the best one I've ever found. It is short. You know that I like things to be short and sweet. And this one goes straight for the jugular. This one it really tells us what nonfiction is. And nonfiction is an account of a subject which is presented as a fact. In other words, it is a testimonial, it is a witness given on a particular subject matter that you're presenting like a part of reality. So when we talk about facts, what do you understand by facts? What is that? But if I tell you that Superman was born in planet Krypton, is that a fact? It is true. It is, you know, Superman, right? I mean, you know who I'm talking about. And even if you don't follow Superman, everybody knows that Superman was born on planet Krypton. That's true. Now, is that a fact? No. You know why? There's no such thing as Superman in the real world, and there's no planet Krypton. Are you understanding the difference between something being true and something being factual? In fiction, Superman exists in the world of fiction. That character, he's a character. He's a product of what? Characters are a product of what? The imagination. They come from somebody invented them. Superman was invented by two guys from Cleveland. But Superman does not exist in the real physical world. I mean, unless you're thinking of Henry Cavill, but Henry Cavill is Henry Cavill. He's not really Superman, right? So when you talk of fiction, you're talking about things that you can see, hear, smell, touch, and feel and taste. Okay? That when we deal with facts, that's what we're dealing with. Now, how many of you read news? Nobody. Not even like once in a while, just to know what's going on out on that big planet called Earth. How many of you know that we're in the middle of an insurrection right now? That the Capitol building in Washington D.C. was attacked last week. Did you hear about that? How? You read it? Oh, you saw it. Okay, but who read about it? Nobody. Okay. I've seen it in the news and I've read about it too. Um, but here's the thing about news. News are supposed to deal with facts, right? With what happens. Yes or no? Yes. 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 I mean, if news were a product of the imagination, we'd be in trouble. And you know what? Sometimes they are. And that creates problems because fiction and nonfiction should not mix, okay? When we read news, they should be based on the facts. But here's the thing: sometimes we read. This happens to me all the time. I read something today, and the next day, when I read a follow-up news, what they said at the beginning was not true. Like for example, it's an example. I think I read once about this years ago about especially in Puerto Rican newspapers. Um, this girl was this 24-year-old girl was murdered by her partner slash boyfriend or whatever or significant other. And the following day, it said that no, she was 26 and that she committed suicide because he was harassing her. So what they told me the day before was not true. Apparently so. Now, here's the thing about accuracy in fiction and nonfiction. A work of fiction can give either a true or false account of the subject and matter. However, it is generally assumed that the author of the account believed them to be truthful at the time of their writing. So, even though what I read in the first news was false, I mean, the girl did die, but not how they said it. So, the other part was not factual. Does that mean that it's nonfiction? That it stopped being nonfiction? Is that what it means? Exactly. The answer is no. That's not what it means. Because if you believe it to be true, if you believe it to be factual at the time that you shared it, well, it's nonfiction. It is still nonfiction. Is that clear, guys? Or do I need to re-explain it? Well, what I'm trying to say is this: if you read something that was not completely factual, but the people that wrote it believed it to be so, it is still considered a work of nonfiction and not a work of fiction. That's what we're trying to say here. Okay. Okay. Nonfiction, as we already said, is one of two main divisions in prose. The other one is fiction, right? And fiction includes different types of works, such as essays, journals, documentaries, scientific papers, photographs. Remember that last semester you guys read a photograph, still film number 48. Remember that one? The girl with the suitcase. You forgot that one. You remember it, right? That she's standing where? A side road. She was next to a road, exactly. So that will be considered nonfiction. A picture will be considered literature, which is wild. But as you can see, literature is broader than what you probably thought before you began studying literature. So you can also add to that blueprints, textbooks, biographies, user manuals, diagrams, etc., etc., etc. There are many forms of nonfiction, and there are even other works that are not even written that could be considered nonfiction. Like, for example, a documentary. You're wondering, wait a minute, a documentary, isn't that a movie? Isn't that something that you see? But documentaries are supposed to deal with facts, so that would make it nonfiction, which is interesting, right? There are many forms of nonfiction that also include magazine articles, histories, websites are considered nonfiction, speeches, and travelogues. Now, remember that the main difference between fiction and nonfiction is that fiction refers to works that come out of an author's imagination because they have not occurred in the real world. They occurred here, and then they were written down. That is fiction. That is prose fiction. Then you have prose nonfiction, which is the other side of the coin, and that is the opposite of fiction. It refers to writings that deal with facts, that are factual, that deal with real things, real people, real events, and real places. If I write or you read about a place called Narnia, would that be fact or fiction? Why? Can you take an airplane from the airport in Aguadilla and go to Narnia? You don't know. Can you get on a cruise ship and go to Narnia? No. No, Narnia is not a factual, it's not a real place. At least not in the factual physical world. It's real in a book. It's a work of the imagination. Narnia existed in the mind of an author first, of C.S. Lewis, but Narnia is not a real place. So if you read about Narnia, you already know that, hey, dude, that's fiction. That's not nonfiction. Remember that nonfiction deals with real things, real people, real events, and real places. Now, did any of you ever take history with me in seventh grade? With Matuta, did you take history with me in seventh grade? Anybody else? Miss Hernandez is there, right? Miss Hernandez, did you take that class with me or no? No? Okay. Well, anybody else? I mean, Matuta, I think, is the only one then. Miss Matuta, I don't know, you remember that in the history class, you know, that we have something, history is everything that has happened. But in history, we get a little bit technical and we talk about history and prehistory. Do you remember when we discussed what makes the difference between one and the other? Okay, well, let me remind you and inform the rest of you. Does anybody know what's the difference between history and prehistory? And don't tell me that it has pre before it. No, it's not. That's not the difference. Because prehistory is history also. What makes the difference is that we call history everything that happened after writing was invented. Prehistory is the history that happened before the invention of writing. Why? Because when we write things down, we keep a record. We can keep records of things. So history is actually recorded history. It's been recorded in writings. Prehistory, since there was no writing, did not exist the way we know writing today, then there's no written record. We have to use archaeology and things like that to know what happened. Is that clear, guys? Okay, now I told you that history began with the invention of writing. Anybody knows when writing was invented and who invented writing? Okay, writing was invented 6,000 years ago by a civilization called the Sumerians in the Middle East. So that means that history began in the year 4000 before Christ. Anything before that is called prehistory because there's no written records. But it's interesting to see here in this picture, for example, that even though writing the way we know it today did not exist, look at that. I don't know if you can interpret what you're looking at here, but this is a cave painting that was found in Indonesia. This was drawn by someone. You have drawings depicting domestic animals and geometric patterns. Somebody drew that. This does not draw itself or occur naturally. Someone drew this 40,000 years ago. 40,000 years ago. And we've only had writing around for 6,000 years. So we already have expressions of humans trying to communicate with symbols that are 40,000 years old. Could there be older things than this? maybe, but we have not discovered them yet. And this was discovered recently. There's another painting here. This one, for example, can you see this? Can you see it? Okay, you've probably seen this painting before. That's an old cave in a place called La Creux in France. And these paintings, what do you see there? Can you interpret what you're seeing there? Some people see bulls. What else? A horse. Okay, so this painting is 40,000 years old. This is in a cave that used to be a tourist attraction. They used to allow people to go in and look like in La Caverna de Camuy. If you've ever been there, you know what it's like. But they had to close it because the paintings were degrading due to human contamination, due to bacterial contamination. Because you know that human beings, we have bacteria everywhere. We're surrounded by it. We have our own atmosphere of bacteria, and these bacteria that were being carried by the tourists were damaging the art. And they said, no, wait a minute, we cannot allow this to disappear because this is too important. So they closed the caves, and people cannot visit this place anymore. But here you have a picture of the place, 20,000 years old, and this looks like a hunting. Now the question here is this a record of a hunting, a prehistoric hunting that really happened? If that's the case, that would make it nonfiction. Or did someone use their imagination and said, you know what? I have a dream of a great hunting trip that will look like this. And they drew that. And if they drew that, that will make it what? Fiction. Because it's something you're imagining. You see the difference? So is this fiction or nonfiction? Well, we don't know, but we can guess. And I think it would be safe to assume, to guess, that this is nonfiction. Because we don't see expressions of fiction until much, much later. Even here, as you can see, um, this is an example of Sumerian cuneiform writing. This is a cuneiform inscription. The Sumerians were the people that I told you that invented writing the way we know today with ideograms. They invented an alphabet. And you can see the symbols the same way that we use symbols, an A, a B, a C, a D. Those are symbols that we use to communicate. So they use their own symbols. They would write on clay with a stylus. They would make a tablet of clay that was like wet, and they would make indentation there. They would let it dry under the sun and then bake it in an oven so it could become very hard, and then store it in a warehouse. Those warehouses were the very first libraries, and many of them have been found. And these tablets have been found, many of them that survive. Some are made in pieces, you know what? But they put the pieces together, and you can identify what they're saying here. The earliest texts in existence, you know what they deal with? They deal with buying and selling stuff, like buying cattle, selling cows and sheep and goats and things like that. Financial transactions, like the kind of records that you would see in a bank statement, and government decrees, like laws and rules and regulations that come from governors. So it's very interesting that the earliest examples of writing that we have are non-fiction. Any question or comment regarding this? Okay. It says here that we're running out of time. Okay, these are other examples of nonfiction. As you can see, they include the almanac, the autobiography, the biography, the blueprint, the book report, the diagram, the diary, the dictionary, the documentary film, the encyclopedia. Guys, before the internet existed, there was something called the encyclopedia. And that was the internet for us. When I was your age, that was the internet. If you had homework and you had to look up for information, you had a collection of books called the encyclopedia. You would go there and get the information there. That's how it used to work back in the day. We also have essays, history. We have journalism. We have letters. We have different kind of letters. We have business letters, letters of interest, love letters, all kinds of letters, right? We have a variety of them. We have literary criticism. We have memoirs, photographs. We saw examples of that last semester. Science books, scientific papers, speech, statute, not statue, statute. Does anybody know what a statute is? Anyone? Um, Maybe the word in Spanish will ring a bell. Estatuto. Does it ring a bell? Exactly. It's a law, a legislation, a regulation, a set of rules. That's what a statute is, okay? Um, so you learn a new word today. The word of the day, statute, with T, a T sound at the end. We have textbooks, we have travelogues, and we have user manuals, and we have many other forms of nonfiction. We have a great variety, and we will be exploring some of them in this class. Okay, and some of them you're most likely familiar with them. Now, when we talk about nonfiction, nonfiction has certain qualities. Let's discuss them briefly, and you're going to be seeing these qualities in this collection as we read different examples of nonfiction. Nonfiction must have a purpose. I mean, why would you write nonfiction? Well, you could write it to give information, to share your feelings, to entertain, or to influence. Those are the reasons. Purposes are reasons for writing something. Nonfiction must be logical. That means that the statements that appear in nonfiction must be supported by reason and evidence. And guys, we live in times that are fascinating and dangerous at the same time. We live in times where we have easy access to information like never before in human history. If you want to know about something, all you have to do is press a freaking button and boom, like magic, it's there. That's wonderful. That is fascinating. When I was your age, you wanted to learn about something, you have to walk to a library, or I mean, it was not like today. You had to look for the information. Now the information comes to you with the press of a button. But at the same time, that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of disinformation, and disinformation is information that is not true. They are falsehood. They are lies, and it's worrisome for me as an individual because I'm not that smart. And sometimes I wonder if what I'm reading is true or not. Does that ever happen to you? Is that a bad thing that we wonder? Why not? No, I agree with you. No, because it showed that we have an interest in the truth and we care about the truth. And is there anything more important than the truth? I don't think so. Nothing is more important than the truth. So, if we have an interest in the truth, we will be skeptical about what we read. We'll wonder if it's true or not. And maybe that will move us to research more and educate ourselves better. But we have to be very careful of the information that floats out there because um, you already know what happened last week in Washington, D.C., right? How many of you know? You know why that happened, right? Disinformation, people spreading around lies, and people not knowing better. That's the result. So is disinformation dangerous? Very, very dangerous. So We have people that we have when we listen to people talking, we have to figure out if what they're saying is supported by evidence and reason. So it's very important that nonfiction observe this quality of being logical. Nonfiction must also have unity. That means that all the parts should be connected and in agreement. You cannot say something here and then contradict yourself in the next paragraph. Have you seen that people sometimes they say something and then they make a next statement? Wait a minute, you said this. What's wrong with you, dude? O te peina o te hace jolo. So if you're talking about lemons, or you're writing something about lemons, then you have no business talking about computers. Stick to the subject matter. There should be unity in what we talk about. There should be connection and agreement. And there should also be coherence. And coherence means that one idea flows from the previous one. That there's a flow that is logical and is connected. You cannot be talking about something in this paragraph or reading about something in the next paragraph. It jumps to talk about something entirely different that has no relationship with what came before. And these are things that we discuss in the writing class. When I taught seventh grade writing, we talk about coherence and unity. That's important that when you write about, your writing, which is not a simple thing to do, and you guys hate doing, it's important that we observe these qualities. Okay. When we deal with nonfiction, we also have this tension between something called objectivism and subjectivism. Many people claim to have the factual truth when you see people expressing themselves through nonfiction. But one man's truth can be another man's lie. So there's a tension between being objective and being subjective because some people care about the facts. Like, for example, the fact 1 plus 1 equals 3. Is that a fact? Guys, I'm not getting any feedback. And we have 1 minute left. 1 plus 1 equals what? 2? 2. So that's a fact. Some people care about facts, but some people care more about their opinions and their feelings. And we have to be very careful of that. You see, people that write and present facts without showing their feelings and opinions are called objective. Some people that are more interested in sharing their opinions and feelings are called subjective. So that's something that we have to be mindful of when we're reading nonfiction. Okay, guys, if you have no more questions, then we have an assessment. There are some questions here that you have to answer. Thank God for copy paste. And there's also asking you here at the end to write a narrative or a persuasive essay. You choose which one you want to write on any of these 3 subjects here. You should keep them all in one document. Okay, keep them in one document. Don't write 2 documents, and remember that you have 48 hours to turn this in because that's what we agreed upon. Okay. All right. So, guys, do you have any questions about what you should be doing?